So this video is an overview on how to actively source on LinkedIn Recruiter, and I'm going to dive right in. Share my screen. All right. So to get to LinkedIn Recruiter, this is my my regular page on LinkedIn. To get to LinkedIn Recruiter, I just type in or just click on Recruiter up top. Okay. You can basically put in a Boolean search here, but I always go to advanced filters because it gives me all of the different filters, all the different options at once. And I'm going to go through, first I'm going to go through these different filters and why you may or may not use them. And then I'm going to show you how to go about messaging people in an efficient way. So LinkedIn Recruiter is awesome because I believe it's the best tool we have. And one of the reasons for that is just the sheer size of the database. So there's something like 170 million people on LinkedIn. The first tab I want to highlight is the open to work and the more likely to respond tab. So the open to work tab is only going to bring up people that have self-selected in that they're open to work. And the reason that this tab is so important is it makes LinkedIn a lot more like a job board and a lot less like Facebook. Because these are people who, again, have said that they're open to work. And ultimately, there might be people who are willing to switch jobs who haven't selected this filter. And ultimately, there may be people who are no longer looking for new jobs that have selected this filter. But you're going to have a much higher density of people that are actually looking for work if you use this filter. Our more likely to respond filter, as you'll notice, this is the open to work filter pulls up 73 million. The more likely to respond is 74 million. This filter fully encompasses the open to work, and it also includes people who are connections, who are 2 connections away, people who follow your company, some other people get lumped into this as well. But the 2 tabs are very similar. Again, as you see, the open to work pulls up 73 million, the more likely to respond pulls up 74 million, and the 73 million is part of the 74 million. Okay. So the job titles filter. So So this is going to pull up anyone who has developer or engineer at one point or another in a prior job or their current job. So it's going to bring up people who have developer and something else. So Java developer would get pulled up. Software engineer would get pulled up. When you hit enter here, it functions as an OR string. So this search will bring up people who have developer, engineer, or Java somewhere in a title. If you just wanted to find people that had it in their current title, you could click on current. Now, the thing that I will warn against with this is if someone just ended a job and they updated their LinkedIn profile, so it's currently January 5th. If someone updated, someone was, let's say, a Java developer and updated their LinkedIn profile yesterday, saying that they're no longer working, they would not get pulled up in a current search, in a current job title search. And these are some of the people that you might most want to see. Right, because they just ended a job. Obviously, you can also do past, so you can look for people who have this in a past title and a past not current title, but I'm not going to belabor the point with the job title tab. Okay, locations. So there's two different places that you can filter by location. There's this location tab where you could do something like type in Charlotte, North Carolina. But there's also a zip code tab. You do the same thing in Charlotte, North Carolina. I typically recommend that people use the zip code, the postal code zip code tab. And the reason for that is that you can also filter by miles out. So instead of just looking in the Charlotte area, I could look at 25 miles out of Charlotte, 50 miles out of Charlotte, 100 miles out of Charlotte. This is particularly relevant nowadays that since people are, a lot of companies only require you work on site once or twice a week. So someone who's 100 miles out of Charlotte might be of interest to me. And again, if I only put in Charlotte, if I put Charlotte in the locations tab, I'm not going to be able to see those people. The caveat to using this tab over the locations tab is if you wanted to look across a state or if you want to look across the whole country, you can't, for example, put in North Carolina here, but you can put in North Carolina here. With both of these, and the same goes with looking all across the United States. With both of these filters, you can list off multiple locations. So I could put in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. And what this will do is it's going to pull up people who live in one of these states. With a lot of the tabs that I'm going to show, not all of them, but a lot of them, you can also exclude people. So imagine I wanted, I was recruiting on a remote position, so I wanted to look anywhere across the United States. But because the position is, or the company is based in Charlotte and they want people who are working Eastern time, perhaps I want to look all across the United States, but I don't want to see people who are in California and Washington. So I could do that. So this is going to pull up people who live anywhere in the United States, but not in California, not in Washington. Okay. So there's going to be some tabs that I don't emphasize because I really don't see a use case or a strong use case. I will say probably with every tab there is some use case if you were recruiting on a certain type of position. But for most of what we recruit on, some of these tabs really don't do a lot of, aren't a big benefit. So workplaces is something I'm going to skip. Skills and assessments. So so you could type in, so if you're recruiting on a mobile developer, for example, you could type in iOS and skills and assessments. But I typically don't use the skills and assessments tab because I could just type in iOS and the keywords. And the reason that I would type it in the keywords and the skills and assessments is because if I type iOS in the keywords, so let's say iOS, well, let's just leave it there. If I type in iOS in the keywords and someone has it in their skills and assessments, it'll pull them up. But sometimes people have iOS, they're an iOS developer and they've got it listed on their LinkedIn profile, but they haven't selected into their skills and assessments. So skills and assessments, this requires an extra step out of the LinkedIn user. It requires an extra step out of the candidate. And so I don't want to, again, exclude people who are iOS developers who have iOS all over their profile, but just who haven't included in the skills and assessments. Okay. You can look for certain companies. So Microsoft. Right, I could laundry list companies, and again, this will pull people who have worked at one of these companies. I can also, again, I can exclude certain companies. The thing that I will warn against, and sometimes I will use this tab, but one of the things I will warn against is sometimes people misspell their company name, or as you can see here, they work at Amazon, but they have Amazon Robotics. And so if you use these filters, you run the risk of excluding people who do in fact work at Amazon, for example, but who have listed, let's say, a subsidiary of Amazon, or who have misspelled something, or who otherwise LinkedIn doesn't pull up and doesn't recognize whatever they put as Amazon. Again, it's a filter that I think is perfectly fine to use, and there's use cases for using it, but I would just be careful of that fact. Okay. You've got schools tab. I'm not going to, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's used in a similar way. Get years of graduation. I'm not going to dive in too much into this. So you've got this industries tab. So in the telecom space, as an example, you could, it might be a good idea to look for people who have, it might be a good idea to use this filter to filter down by people who are in the telecommunications industry. But again, one of the things that I will warn heavily about using this filter is LinkedIn has to recognize the company as a telecommunications company, or they don't get pulled up. And just through firsthand testing, there are plenty of telecommunications companies that in fact don't get pulled up. So this is a filter again that you can use, but I guarantee you that you will not pull up some people that you do want to see. Okay. So the keywords is kind of like the bread and butter probably going to use this tab just about every time. And this keywords filter works as just a standard Boolean function. So if I was looking for Java developers, I would again, I'm not going to belabor this point, but standard Boolean function goes in here. One thing I will warn against with LinkedIn is the asterisk function. For whatever reason, it does not work. So on the other job boards, if you were to put develop asterisks, this is going to pull up people who have developed, developers, developed. But on LinkedIn, it's actually just going to pull up develop. So be wary of that. Another thing I will point out is you want to be careful about your modifiers. So like the ands and ors. Most of the time, if you lowercase, when you do something like this, you're not going to run into any issues. But if you were to copy and paste, long story short, sometimes if you don't capitalize all of your modifiers, you're going to get a no results response, or no results result, I guess. So I would be careful to make sure that you're capitalizing. Employment type, I recommend not using this tab much. And again, so the reason that I recommend people don't use some tabs is because so employment type allows you to look for people with full-time, part-time, contract, internship, but this requires individuals to take an extra step. It requires them to list that they are in a full-time role, that list they're in a part-time role. And I think if you were to filter by some of these, if you were to look for people or use this filter, you're going to exclude plenty of people that you do in fact want to see. Okay, so the recruiting activity tab is a tab I do want to highlight. So the way that I primarily use this, it looks something like this. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to exclude anyone that has been messaged in the past week by actually anyone in our company. So if I messaged someone 3 days ago, it's going to exclude them. If Alex Sallow messaged someone 3 days ago, it's going to exclude them. We all have a shared LinkedIn license, company-wide shared LinkedIn license, and so it's going to exclude. Again, it's going to exclude anyone that's been messaged. And you can pull this back further. So I could, if you didn't want to see anyone that's been messaged in the past year, as an example. Again, this will exclude anyone that's been messaged in the past year by anyone in our company. I actually think that this, it's an advanced way that you can use this filter. Is if you were to combine, and stay with me on this, but if you were to combine the open to work filter with the excluding people who have been messaged in the past year, what this is going to do is it's going to give you a pretty high density of people that are actually open to work. Because imagine look for an iOS developer who has their open to work filter on. Well, chances are there's a good chance that if they are in fact open to work, or if they were in fact open to work, they would have been messaged by someone in our company in the past year. And so when you combine these filters, it can be very effective because the pool of people that you bring up is particularly fresh. Not sure if that made a ton of sense. Don't worry about it if it didn't. All right, I went over the zip code, company sizes. So you can filter by company size. So this is going to pull people who have basically at least 1,000 employees. Concern with this again is if LinkedIn doesn't recognize the company, or for whatever reason doesn't recognize the company as being in this size, it's not going to bring them up. So this is one that I will use from time to time because if I'm recruiting on an enterprise client, perhaps I only want to see candidates who have enterprise experience. But again, I would be wary that you're going to exclude people that you might want to see. All right. Again, I'm not going to go over every single tab. I'm going to go over the ones that I think are particularly relevant. So the recently joined LinkedIn tab is an interesting one. So what you can do is you can look, and you can do any of these individually, but this is going to pull up people who have joined LinkedIn essentially within the past 3 months. And again, if I were to exclude that, it's going to include people who've joined LinkedIn in the past 30 days. So why would you use this tab? So this can be a great tab because you think about why do people join LinkedIn? Well, a lot of people join LinkedIn because, so you can imagine someone who's been working for 7 years, who just quit or lost their job. And so what do they do to look for a job? Well, one of the things they might do is create a LinkedIn profile. So this is going to be a pool of people that might be particularly worth seeing. Okay. Years of experience. So this allows you to look for people who again, have just a certain amount of experience. So what this will do is it's going to pull people who have at least 7 years of experience. I could pull this back, and now I've got people who have between 7 and 27 years of experience. I use this tab somewhat often. The thing I would be potentially concerned about, or the thing I would just note, is that there's going to be a lot of people who have, so a lot of people do not include their full work experience on their LinkedIn profile. So if you were to look for people who have, let's say, at least 7 years of experience, there may be people who only have 5 years of experience listed on LinkedIn, but actually have 20 years of experience, but they've only included their most recent position. So I would just be wary of that. But it can be a great way to filter for, if you were looking for junior level roles. Perhaps one move you could do is let's take out some of the people who definitely aren't junior, right? So let's take out this pool of people again that are definitely have too much experience. Okay. Okay, I think that's all I really want to show with these tabs. I will say I would highly recommend exploring the different tabs, thinking about why you may or may not use some of these tabs. I learned all of this by exploration of the tool myself, and I think that's definitely the best way that you're going to learn it. I would say, even though I highlighted certain tabs and didn't highlight others, if you can find a use case for using or leaning more heavily on some of the tabs that I didn't mention, feel free to do so. One of the questions I would just ask yourself is, where could this potentially go wrong? And oftentimes the answer is that it requires the person who has the profile to take an extra step. Again, that's why I don't like the idea of leaning too heavily on skills and assessments, because it requires, even if they have iOS all over their LinkedIn profile, it's only going to pull up in skills and assessments if they've taken that extra step of including it on their profile. Okay. Just one final thing that I want to mention before going to show you how to actually message people is that there's a wide variety of people have a wide variety of information on their profiles. So there are some people who basically their profile is like their resume, right? They've got a ton of info, bullet points and bullet points and bullet points of their prior roles listed. But then there are people who all they have on their LinkedIn profile is the titles of their companies and or the titles of their positions and the company name, right? They've basically got very, very little on their LinkedIn profile. And when you run a search, one of the things to keep in mind is that varying degree of information, because one of the benefits of the people who don't have a ton of info on their LinkedIn profiles is that they're harder to see, they're less visible to recruiters. And so a simple search like, let's say, iOS developer in the job title, this might actually be a great search because it could pull up people who have basically iOS developer in one of their job titles, but almost nothing else. And you better believe that those people are going to be less visible and less contacted by other recruiters. They're going to have less competing opportunities in front of them than people who have, iOS and Swift and all sorts of other flashy keywords. Okay, so I'm going to actually now dive in to show how you go about messaging. All right. So this search, and don't worry about the specifics, but this search pulled up 1.9 thousand people. And what it's going to do is it's going to go, it's going to give me 25 at a time, 25 different profiles. And it'll go up to 40 pages. So you can actually only view 1,000 people in a search. So if I were to go to, it's going to stop me at 40 pages. It's going to stop me at 1,000 candidates. So something to keep in mind. Okay, so I could open up each profile individually. I could look through it and determine who I want to message, and I'm not gonna talk too much to that. But one of the things I do want to point out is you can message multiple people at once. So I could, let's say I like this person and this person, this person. I could essentially scroll down, go through the whole page, click on the different people that I do in fact want to message, and then I can message them all at the same time. So I'm going to take a prior template that I have. Okay. So when you first create a message, you'll need to populate everything, right? You'll need to populate the subject line. You'll need to populate the body of the message. I'll point out that if you use, if you click here, as you see, it says hi first name, and what this will do is it's going to say hi Charles if I selected Charles, hi Priyanka if I message Priyanka. So it'll individualize the names of the people that I messaged. But I would type in my subject line. I'd type in the body of my message, and then what I would do is I would click save as a new template. So it's iOS developer. I'd click save, and then once I send the message, then the next time I go to the next page, when I go and select everyone, and I send a group message. When I go to search for template, it'll be the first template up here. Okay. You can attach like job descriptions, and I often do so. The thing that I will just note is that when you do have to reattach it, it's not going to save. So if I were to every time that I go to send a message out to the group, I just go click on and repopulate the job description. There are other LinkedIn has other things that you can do with it. You can post jobs. There's some other things that I didn't show, like saving a project. I'm not going to go over some of the stuff in this video because I think that these are kind of the core things I think are worth showing when it comes to active outreach. Alrighty, that's all I got for you guys. Hope it was helpful.